On a sunny day, my husband Robert and I, along with his parents, were embarking on a much-anticipated camping trip. As we made a brief stop at a highway rest area, and I stepped out of the ERV, Robert turned to me and said something completely unexpected and harsh. "You're not our family. Go home now." His tone was so unlike the caring man I married, it caught me off guard. I looked at him, bewildered, only to see smirks on the faces of all three. Without another word, Robert started driving the RV, leaving me stranded. My heart raced with disbelief. They couldn't possibly be leaving me here, in the middle of nowhere. In a panic, I phoned my mother-in-law, hoping for some explanation or a change of heart, only to be met with a cold dismissal. "You really thought you could come along? What audacity! You're just my daughter-in-law. Know your place," she declared. With those words, she made it clear there was no turning back for them. The call ended abruptly, and I watched helplessly as the ERV faded into the distance. Feeling abandoned and betrayed, I couldn't fathom the cruelty of their actions. They had even had me prepare for the trip only to cast me aside. Overwhelmed by sadness and a sense of betrayal, I realized I had no option but to call a taxi and return home alone. I'm Aita, 29 years old, married to Robert for 3 years. Robert had bought us a house close to his parents, sparing me from living under the same roof with them. Despite the proximity, living separately was a relief. Yet, their unpredictability often left me exhausted, from last-minute large shopping requests to cleaning their greasy, dish-filled kitchen. Though Robert apologized for his parents' intrusive behavior, it was wearing me down. His parents cared greatly about their public image, treating me with surprising kindness in front of others. I remained cautious about speaking ill of them, always mindful of their reputation. This recent ordeal on the way to the camping trip only intensified my feelings of being marginalized and manipulated. It was a painful reminder of the delicate and tense dynamics within my family. I had always harbored hopes of connecting more deeply with my in-laws, but the shock of being left behind by my husband on what was supposed to be a family camping trip left me deeply wounded and struggling to come to terms with their betrayal. The idea for the camping trip surfaced unexpectedly 1 week ago during a visit to my husband's parents on our day off. While cleaning their storage room, I stumbled upon an old lantern, which sparked a conversation about camping. "Oh, that? We bought it in case of a power outage and completely forgot about it," my mother-in-law explained dismissively. My own fond memories of camping with my father, who is an avid camper and owns an RV, led me to share my experiences and inquire if they too enjoyed camping. My husband's eyes lit up with enthusiasm as I spoke. "That's amazing! I've always wanted to try it," he exclaimed. It was then decided on the spur of the moment we would embark on our first family camping trip the following week. "Allison, please rent an RV for us," my husband said. I was hesitant to ask my father to lend us his prized RV, knowing how much he cherished and meticulously maintained it. My husband sensed my reluctance and urged, "It's our first time camping, and we don't know what we need. It would be safer to borrow your dad's RV. Besides, I want to make this a fun trip for my parents." "Please, Aita." Feeling somewhat cornered by his plea, I agreed to talk to my father. To my surprise, he was more than willing to lend the RV. "Really? Are you sure? I thought you might say no since you always take such good care of it," I expressed my concerns. "If it's for you, Aita, I'm more than happy to lend it, and I'm touched that you want to please Robert's parents," my father responded warmly. He even went the extra mile by providing a complete set of camping gear, selecting beginner-friendly equipment, and explaining how to use each item. I left my father's house feeling supported and optimistic about the trip. This preparation and my father's generosity made the subsequent abandonment by my husband and in-laws all the more painful and incomprehensible. The experience left a bitter taste, complicating my feelings about family ties and trust. My father's enthusiastic support and willingness to lend his cherished RV warmed my heart immensely. I was hopeful that this camping trip would bridge the gap between my in-laws and me. Energized by this possibility, I threw myself into the preparations, securing a campground equipped with electrical hookups and located near a hot spring, which I thought everyone would enjoy. When I shared the details with my husband and in-laws, their response was enthusiastic. "We're so lucky to have you, Aita." "I'm so excited, I can't wait!" they exclaimed. Their excitement boosted my spirits, and I was glad to see them happy. On the day of the trip, I climbed into the ERV buzzing with excitement as we hit the highway. My heart was full of anticipation as we drove towards the campground. However, after some time on the road, my mother-in-law's demanding nature resurfaced. "Robert, I'm thirsty. Can we stop at the interchange on our way?" she asked. "Mom, I brought some drinks. You can pick anyone from here," Robert replied. "None of them really appeal to me." "As my daughter-in-law, you should know my tastes," she retorted. Apologetically, I exited the ERV at the interchange to buy her a Dr. Pepper as requested. It was then, as I stepped out, that my husband's demeanor shockingly changed. "Aita, you're not a part of our family, so go home now," he said coldly, a tone I had never heard from him before. Confused and shocked, I barely had time to process his words before I saw them smirk and drive away, leaving me stranded. Panicked and feeling like this must be some cruel joke, I called my mother-in-law, only to be met with a chilling response. "You thought you could really come with us? What a brazen woman you are! You are not part of our family. Be aware of that. Bye! We'll enjoy a good family time without you," she said, and the line went dead. Standing alone, I was dumbfounded. How could they do this to me after I had prepared everything with so much care and thought? Their actions left me deeply hurt and questioning everything I knew about them. Overwhelmed by a rush of bitterness and sorrow, I felt unable to process the painful emotions. In desperation, I called a taxi and headed back home alone. The following day, my husband Robert and his parents returned from the camping trip, bubbling with excitement about their adventure. Shockingly, they showed no remorse for abandoning me and didn't even offer an apology. When I confronted them about the previous day's events, the response I received was baffling. "We did it to teach you a lesson," they said. "Aita, you need to understand your role as our daughter-in-law. We felt we needed to take drastic action because you weren't grasping it otherwise." Their justification for such extreme behavior stunned me. There was no reason that could justify leaving me stranded on the highway. The conversation took an even more surprising turn when my mother-in-law mentioned something about living together. Confused, I asked, "What do you mean by living together?" "I haven't heard anything about this." It was then revealed that Robert had purchased a new house with the intention of having his parents move in with us the next year. "We'll be living together, so I'm going to be stricter with you," he warned. I was taken aback, having never been consulted about such a significant decision. Frustration mounted within me as they then nonchalantly instructed me to clean and return the RV to my father, as though nothing was amiss. They hadn't even refueled the RV or thanked my father for his generosity. Seeing the ERV littered with trash and unappreciated only intensified my disappointment in them. They were not only dismissive of me, but disrespectful towards my father's kindness as well. Determined to uphold my father's reputation, I meticulously cleaned the ERV, washed it, and filled the gas tank before returning it. When I arrived, my father greeted me with a broad smile, unaware of the ordeal. "How was the trip? Did you enjoy it?" he asked eagerly. The warmth in his voice contrasted sharply with the cold treatment from Robert and his parents. It was a poignant reminder that I was not considered part of their family in the true sense, a realization that hurt deeply. I couldn't bring myself to share the joy of the camping trip, so instead I confided in my father about the harsh reality, how I was abandoned at the highway interchange, how Robert's demeanor had drastically shifted, and his unilateral decision to have his parents move in with us without any discussion. Upon hearing my story, the joy on my father's face gave way to a look of intense anger. "This is unacceptable, Aita. Those people's idea of disciplining you is absurd. We can't just let this go," he fumed. My father then revealed that he had a plan, a way to make things right, and he also knew the perfect spot for a real camping experience. "Listen carefully," he said, his voice low and serious, yet with a hint of excitement about the secret plan he was about to share. I took his advice to heart and returned to my in-laws' home, where my husband and his parents were still animatedly discussing their recent trip. Spotting an opportunity, I approached them with a composed smile and spoke in a gentle tone. "There's a place even more beautiful than where we went yesterday, especially now with the autumn leaves. Why don't we try a proper camping experience? We can pitch tents, have a barbecue, and at night, the sky is absolutely filled with stars." "Really? Where is this place?" they asked, their interest piqued. "It's a special spot I'd rather keep secret." "Can I come too? To fulfill my role as your wife?" I asked, playing into their narrative. "That sounds like fun, and yes, you should definitely come along." They agreed eagerly. We planned the trip for the following weekend. As usual, they loaded me with all the preparations and continued their attempts to teach me discipline, but I was undeterred. I meticulously prepared, keeping my father's secret plan in mind. When the day of the trip arrived, I drove us in my father's RV to a remote campsite, which they found utterly mesmerizing. "It looks like our own private site," they remarked, visibly excited by the new setting. After setting everything up, they decided to go for a walk to enjoy the scenery. "We'll leave you to set up the tent, Allison," they said as they walked away, leaving me alone with the campsite. "Enjoy your walk," I replied, watching them disappear into the woods. About 25 minutes later, I received a frantic call from my husband. "Allison, we're lost. I can't find your dad's RV." "Don't worry. I'm on my way home with it," I calmly informed him, executing the first step of the plan my father and I had crafted. This was not just a journey back to safety, but also a step towards reclaiming my respect and setting boundaries in a relationship that had sorely tested them. Furious and repulsed by my husband's abrupt and demeaning manner, I continued to drive away. Although I was nearby, the thought of turning back to help them diminished with every passing second. Soon, my phone rang again. My husband's voice was different this time. He sounded confused and anxious. I can't set up the tent. It's starting to rain and my parents are getting angry. It's getting cold. What should I do?" His voice trembled as he spoke. "That was quick," I remarked dryly, feeling the irony of their sudden regret. "Why don't you look up how to set up a tent on YouTube?" Forgetting the tent, my husband blurted out in frustration. My father pulled it too hard and it ripped apart. "Aita, you've had your fun. Now fix your attitude and come pick us up." "I'm not coming," I responded firmly. "If you walk for about an hour, you'll reach a broad road. If you're not going to camp, then come down here with your stuff." "Just because I'm asking you nicely doesn't mean you can get all high and mighty," he retorted, his tone sharp and dismissive. It was clear then this was the true nature of the man I had married, and my feelings for him had completely cooled. All I could do was sigh in resignation. "Screw this! I'm going to dump all this useless stuff. Just wait till we get home. Someone owns that place. It's private property. If you dump anything here, you'll be sued for illegal dumping. You know, there's a sign there that clearly states no littering," I warned him. "I don't care," he said, his voice filled with defiance. It was evident he didn't believe I was serious about the drastic changes about to unfold. After a pause, I made my intentions clear. "After our divorce, I'll be demanding compensation for the emotional distress from all the harassment you've done to me." "What? The divorce? Is it serious?" he stammered, finally realizing the gravity of the situation. "Yes, I'm serious. Our conversation from the time I was left behind on the highway is recorded on my dad's RV's dash cam. You can't deny it. Not just that, I've also recorded the conversations when you were harassing me afterwards." He tried to plead, "Let's calm down. We don't have any savings because we've been paying our mortgage. If you leave, I won't have anyone to cook and clean for us." His plea revealed his dependency and selfish intentions, reinforcing my decision. The clarity of my next steps was sharp and uncompromising. This was not just about ending a marriage, but about reclaiming my dignity and self-respect. Overwhelmed with frustration and clarity, I told my husband, "You should think before you speak. I'm not your servant. If you refuse the divorce, I'll take this to court, and it's going to become a major issue that everyone in the family will know about. Knowing how much he cared about others' opinions, he fell silent, even as I could hear his parents causing a commotion in the background. But none of that mattered to me anymore. After a brief attempt to salvage the conversation with a week, the call was abruptly cut off. Soon after, my in-laws bombarded me with calls, which I completely ignored. Eventually, the call stopped, likely because their phone batteries had died. My father's plan for a subtle revenge turned out to be a resounding success. On my way home, I picked up the divorce papers, filled them out, and left them on the kitchen table before heading to my childhood home, where my kind father lived. For some unknown reason, it took my husband and his parents 5 hours to come down from the mountain, a trip that normally took just 1 hour. Should have used Google Maps instead of bothering me, I thought to myself, shaking my head at their foolishness. Driven by desperation to persuade me to stay, my husband later showed up at my parents' house, visibly furious. "Aita, get out here now! I'll teach you a lesson," he yelled from outside. I coolly replied, "If you have something to say, talk to my father. He's quite upset, so this might not end well for you." My towering and formidable father confronted my husband at the door, shutting down any further outbursts. Moreover, they had left their camping gear and tent in the mountains, which led to them being sued for illegal dumping. The landowner pressing charges? My father, who had inherited the property from my grandfather. Security cameras installed due to frequent trespassing and dumping caught them in the act, making it clear who was responsible. I couldn't help but ponder the potential consequences they would face. Following the completion of our divorce, I pursued and won a significant settlement from my husband and his parents for the emotional distress they caused me. Unable to pay off their mortgage due to the financial strain, my husband's house was foreclosed. He and his parents now live together in their deteriorating, leaky home, a stark contrast to their previous life. As the saying goes, no use crying over spilled milk. I returned to the company where I worked before getting married and am gradually rebuilding the lifestyle that suits me best. Next month, I plan to go camping with my parents, and I'm confident it will be a joyful experience, free from the shadows of the past.